Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the empty shelves and shortages over in UK. Why is this going on? Why is this happening? No, it's not what the mainstream media is telling you it is. And how is this likely to continue? If you're living over there, by all means, stay for this video. If you're just interested in this, in some of these mechanics, also stick around. So number one, first good news, it's really not as bad as most of the media is trying to make it look. Maybe not most of it, but some of it is definitely trying to make this worse than it actually is. Yes, some of these images are kind of concerning, but I have family living over there, and what they tell me is, yeah, some of this is going on. Sometimes you buy what you find, not exactly what you want. But even it's not Mad Max, it's not great either. On the other hand, you have some people that tell you, man, I find everything that I need. This is going to be depending on your purchasing habits as well, but that may well be the case. Let me know in the comments section what's your own story. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. On the other hand, point number two, I guess, would be this is not generalized. This is something that's being said by the mainstream media over there in UK. And keep in mind, especially in UK, the government has a huge hold over the media. Nothing is being said without their authorization, without their approval. And the official story, let's put it that way, it's really not all that accurate at all. It's just not a true representation of why this is really going on, why this is happening. So I was reading, I think it was even here in the Daily Mail, they say that this is happening also in Germany. Look, I've been traveling a little bit last few days, and I specifically looked around to see if this is something that's happening elsewhere. I haven't seen not just a partial empty shelf. I haven't even seen like a single can missing on anything. So you see the typical thing of employees of the store just filling up that gap immediately as soon as someone takes something. There's completely fully packed shelves everywhere that I looked. So no, this is not happening everywhere. If you're being told that, if you read that, understand it is a lie. And it is a lie really, because the true reason why this is going on is a lot more concerning than what they're letting you know. I guess another important point, no, this is not because of COVID. It really has nothing to do with COVID. If it did, you would have seen this going on in many other places, and you're not seeing it, not nearly to this extent where you have, there may be something that is just not available. Again, these last few weeks, I've been looking specifically, not even lines formed in gas stations, in stores, nothing like this, just fully packed full of stuff. That's what I've observed in our places. But it's not because of COVID. COVID was actually a great excuse so as to cover this for a very long time. Now that it's wearing thin and it's kind of not flying anymore, they're going with a lack of truckers. We don't have enough truck drivers. That's why that is a small part really of why this is going on. Sure, are there less truck drivers than before? Are there less European Union workers in UK than before? Yes, of course. That was part of the idea, right? The idea was to have less people, and these are the words, not mine, but Theresa May said we're going to be creating a quote unquote hostile environment for workers, for migrant workers. So when you create a hostile environment, naturally people try to avoid it. One of the things that, not these guys, because the people running things knew these things perfectly well. Maybe a lot of these folks didn't quite understand that when people are not welcomed somewhere, if they have any choice, they're going to be going elsewhere. And a lot of these folks assumed that maybe because of these, I don't know, psychological working inside people's heads, but that people would still just go because they have to do it. That is true for more desperate people. Think of it like illegal workers in the United States. Sure, those people will take any kind of abuse, all sorts of crap. You can pay them peanuts, they'll still show up. That's not the case of the average Polish guy that can, one of the things you hear the most is, I'd rather stay home, work for a little bit less, and avoid the hassle. If you have problems with the visas, if you're really not paid all that much more than you would like, and also if you're not treated all that well and you're treated kind of like crap by people that were very strongly led to believe that you were their enemy, or you're just a foreign invader stealing their precious jobs, then you're a lot more likely to say, okay, I'll stay home. This is one key aspect of, you cannot treat the same way people that have options. I mean, if you want to treat that way someone that lands in a dinghy, in a rubber boat in your coast coming from Africa, sure. But that guy's not going to be driving your trucks or working on your, maybe, yeah, but that is definitely the lowest of the lowest kind of worker you can actually get. Maybe a lot of those guys are planning on not working at all and sitting their asses in some detention center and being fed and, roof over their heads. That's all they wanted to begin with. So when you start treating people like that, they will say, okay, I'll stay here in Poland. The Hungarian guy is going to be working, for less money, or he's going to be working in some other, maybe go drive a truck in Germany or some other country that is paying better. Why bother with all of this hassle? But that's really not, this is one of those excuses that, like COVID, like, yeah, this is because of COVID, everyone is the same boat. And now, yeah, it's because of truck drivers. We have, we need more workers. We have a surplus of job offers. That sounds good. The reality, though, is more linked to this sort of thing, which is how things have changed and how dependent you actually are from those other countries. And one of the big things about Brexit, which it's perfectly fine, and I actually agree with, going with this sovereign determination of governing yourself and having more control of your borders, or having complete control of your borders and being very selective with all of that. Now, when you leave that European Union, you are going to be having some consequences to that, which a lot of people understood. Some people clearly didn't understand, or at least were not told a more accurate picture. But you are going to be seeing some of these trucks that would drive back and forth. You could have a truck driving from Germany all the way to London and not, not even slow down, other than for basic driving necessities, but there was no actual controls on any of that. The guy would just drive a truck back and forth all day long. Now, if you actually have to stop those trucks, every single one, even if it's just 5 minutes, and it's usually several hours, not just 5 minutes, but if you have to just stop each one of these for 5 minutes, because you actually have to do that, you actually have to control each and every one, that is going to be adding a lot of cost, a lot of labor, a lot of time, a lot of hassle that many producers around here are not all that interesting, and it's going to be sending that price up. The real reason why you're seeing this is because those prices are rising, and some of these products are not getting there anymore. It's not because of the truck drivers. It is a tiny little bit because of that, but mostly inflation. You're seeing this already. If it was just about driving trucks, you wouldn't see such a huge impact in prices, and prices are definitely going up quite a bit. Eventually, I guess they'll keep pushing like they did with the COVID line. They're going to be pushing the truck driver line for a while. Eventually, people are going to be going, really? A year later, we're still seeing this because of damn truck drivers? No, it's prices, it's inflation, it's a new reality. Look, if you've been growing, developing as an economy, as a nation for decades with a direct flowing lifeline, and these are actually power lines. I think that 50-60% of the food is produced in the European Union countries, in the EU countries, not in UK. And for power, it's like 50%. All of these are lines connecting electricity, interconnectors between Britain and other parts of Europe, right? That is something that will have a price as well. And this is something that a lot of people were simply not expecting. They didn't quite understand the impact of how that would affect prices, in spite of having reached a deal, an agreement it still has an impact on how much you pay. And it goes both ways. Look at this guy, this farmer.
1,200 pigs on this farm, all of them being reared for meat. But right now, for every pig that Peter produces, he's making a loss of between 10 and 15 pounds. The whole industry.
So if you have a business in which you lose 10 to 15 quid per pig that you're producing, then that's really not a business model that's going to be working. But why is this? Well, we have Peter here, actually, Farmer Peter, explaining it himself, at least partially.
Caused by a shortage of abattoir workers. Peter also can't get the staff he needs and blames Brexit.
Because we haven't had the Eastern Europeans coming over here, and the government has now set these high qualifications that they've got to have to come and work here, when we all know you can't all have a degree.
Well, so there's several things. He talks about Europeans as he's not a European himself. This is something I've come across so many times, and it's kind of weird because you think that, even kids, but if you send your kids to school, I mean, I had to explain my own kids that this is part of Europe. UK is part of Europe, even though they've been told it's not for a very long time. And I actually had this conversation with a guy that he was saying, no, we're not Europeans, and I asked him, okay, what are you? Are you African, Asian, American? I know you're not any of those. You're European, but you've just been brainwashed into thinking you're not. And sure, I mean, in terms of the referendum, for years, there was a very clear political line of, creating this animosity and this idea of they're coming after our jobs, these damn Europeans, and creating this thing, which has an impact. Like Peter here says, Europeans, like if it's not himself, it is part of who you are. But when you start thinking this way, and when you start treating people that way, people that have options will choose something else. He says you don't need not everyone can have a university degree. Typical, people don't like being treated like that. Of course, you don't need a university degree to move around pigs or feed them. Yeah, I guess he doesn't need it for doing this either. But it's not just a lack of workers. It is the feed has gone up in price. The food for the pigs has gone up in price for the same reason I was explaining before. The supplies for his farm, the fuel, and yes, the workers as well, and the drivers. But it's all driving towards something that, unfortunately, I know very well from Argentina, and pretty much everyone in South America knows it perfectly well, which is inflation. You cannot have a business model by which each one of these little animals cost you $15. That is not a business model. You have to make money. You have to make a few quid on each one of these that you're selling, not lose money. That means that eventually this is going to be translated to inflation. And this is from a local producer, guys. This is from a producer down the road. So it's going to be for the stuff that's being imported from the rest of Europe. That's going to be having a price increase, inflation, and you're going to be seeing it in local stuff as well. But what all this means basically is it's not going to be getting better anytime soon. Okay, these lines of connection are just a representation about how interconnected everything else. And if you want to go back in time 30 years, you will have to make some huge adjustments. If you've been growing with that lifeline and you now want to go without it, you'll have to adapt to it, and it's not going to be something comfortable. What this all just boils down to is that on the pyramid, on the social pyramid, where you are, maybe upper, lower, middle, wherever it is that you are, you're going to be dropping, right? What we've learned in Argentina, what I've learned for so many years suffering this sort of crap in terms of inflation is it just means more poverty. If you were upper middle class, you kind of have to wiggle with your budget and somewhat stay within it, maybe go from upper to lower middle class. If you're lower middle class, you're going to be struggling quite a bit. If you're poor, you're going to be suffering. And this is something I've been talking about for years now. I mean, even before Brexit, when people were asking me, hey, what could happen? What could be the consequences after this goes down? This is the exact same thing I was explaining. Inflation, prices going up. And to be completely honest, when you look at that pyramid, it's, pretty much all of these folks are going to be dropping. The guys on top, they're going to be just fine. Not only just fine, they're going to be making more money out of this. This is just the way it works. Probably why they were so inclined into going through with it. because they knew that they could benefit quite well from it. Like Murdoch said, when I go to London, they do as I say. When I go to Brussels, they'll tell me, they'll get back to me. So like he was not being listened or obeyed. That is part. But what's important for you is understanding that these things don't impact those people. And say even people like Boris Johnson. If you look at the budget that a guy from the elite has, if you look at his monthly expenses, has mansions, yachts, jets, private jets. His food budget is just it's just a tiny fraction of his real budget, and that inflation is not going to be hitting him hard at all. It's just a minuscule amount of his monthly expenses compared to everything else, and those everything else he's going to be actually doing a lot better than before. Now, for the average guy that has to put food on the table for a family, your food, services, power, heating budget, that is a big chunk of your expenses, and that is going to be hit particularly hard by inflation. Anyway, guys, if you're interested in this sort of thing, how you prepare for all of this, remember you have the Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse, which is my first book, available in Amazon, links below, Bugging Out and Relocating, and Street Survival Skills, all of those down there. My advice would be find ways of working with what you have, making the best of your budget, tighten it as much as possible, call your providers of different services again and try to get reductions in your internet, your phone company, whatever it is. Try finding ways of saving money, because if not, that little pyramid is going to be getting at you. And you'll find ways of making even more money, which is not nearly as easy as it sounds, and I get it, but there's really no other way of getting through something like this. Or just accept that you're going to be living to lower standards than what you were used to before. That is also not the end of the world. If you were middle class and now you're somewhat of a, lower than that, just accept it for what it is. Life still goes on, and it's not the end of the world either. See you in our next video, folks. Have a great day. Take care.